here, but the Bible was written by people for people that had a supernatural perspective. How important is having a supernatural perspective when you consider the things of God, and why isn't that more common?
Well, you can't resist what you don't believe is there. If you have no awareness that you're being opposed and conspired against, because if you look at Ephesians 6:12 and you read what it has to say here, where it says, "For we do not wrestle," we'd like to put the period there, but that's not the truth. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. If I embrace that scripture in its totality and all its meaning, I can no longer believe in accidental history.
Right.
I have to believe that they are conspiring against me. The Bible is full of it. David talks about it in the Psalms all the time, that things are conspiring against him. And most people live and die never knowing that they were opposed the entire time, either to keep them. I remember Tom McCaslin, you knew Tom.
Yeah.
He would say this. He said, the number one role of the devil is to keep you from Jesus. But if he can't keep you from Jesus and you find Jesus, his number two role is to keep you from Jesus. And that's the whole point. And that's exactly what the scripture states, is that he wants to blind us. The word blind there means to obfuscate and to have a murky or cloudy myopia. So it's kind of like when you see a cataract in a dog's eye, you can kind of see how it's turning gray.
Right.
There's just a myopic, something going on there. And basically, it's not blindness in the sense that he covers our eyes. It's blindness due to distraction. So when we look at the sower sows the word, he talks about the cares of this life, the deceitfulness of riches, and the lust of other things. So I'm looking at you right now. So his goal is not necessarily to blind me to you. It's to get me to turn and look at something else which gets you out of my peripheral vision. So that's what he wants to do. He wants to turn our head to where Jesus is no longer the image or the mirror that we're looking into, but what we desire and need, the lust of our own heart. And so that's what he does. And that's what he uses to build. That's where the mindsets come from, the strongholds come from. They come from desires that we have. So, the thing is the devil can't make you do anything as a believer. He has to trick you. Notice it does not say that you may stand against the power of the devil. It doesn't say that. It says scheme. So we know that his power is deception. That is. So it's a mind game, and that's really what I believe it's 2 Corinthians 2:11 says. We are not ignorant of Satan's devices. The word devices, noemata in the Greek, means mind games. And so these are all things that cloud and keep Jesus from being clear in that beautiful 6K, pristine, digital format. We don't see it that way. We see a very obfuscated, blurred, a lot of white noise. And we're unable to be transformed from glory to glory because we have things that the salt has lost its savor. There's too many ingredients in there that are taken away from the, so.
I recently heard somebody say that the devil only has one ability, and that is to deceive. And that's only when we allow him. We have to essentially permit him that because we believe whatever he's trying to peddle. Since the Enlightenment, I guess, I've read that, with the Enlightenment came this era that really is still with us of skepticism and this questioning everything, and of course we have talked about the founders of this country being deist and understanding there's a God, but not really thinking he's God in a personal way, and certainly not a supernatural God. And so they rejected much of the supernatural aspects of the Bible. How has that sort of become their legacy in this country, where now it seems not just here in America, but in the first world, let's say in general, people really don't embrace a supernatural gospel?
Well, they don't have any problem with the supernatural. That is clear. We've still got the pagan roots that are all through our country and first world. So they're very religious. I believe that we come into this world, we don't learn to worship, we're born worshiping. So we're doing something, we're just channeling it in different areas. Yeah. So when you think about, I would never want to speak ill of men that put their life on the line to birth this nation. Sure. And but however, their viewpoint was not the gospel viewpoint that we're speaking from today, even though they did embrace, many of them embraced Jesus, many of them were good Christian men. However, the totality of the movement of the establishing of this great nation was not just steeped in Judeo-Christian ethic, but it was also infused with secret societies from Europe and places of that nature. So they don't really have a problem with the supernatural, just they have a problem with the supernatural Jesus.
Yeah.
So there's not a problem with Shazam.
Right.
There's not a problem with Superman. There's not a problem with Spider-Man and any kind of hybrid out there. We spend billions of dollars on this industry, but yet we can't believe in a supernatural Jesus in which we have documented evidence of a man that walked on water. But yet we would rather believe in fairy tales, Nephilim type characters, demigods, but we won't believe that the God of the Bible is able to do anything for our situation.
Obviously, that's by design of darkness. I mean, the enemy is certainly propagating much of that. But I don't know. I just find that interesting because these are many educated people and they refuse to accept Scripture and, of course, Jesus in most cases. But yet, again, we talked about, you just mentioned it, $1 billion industry of these Marvel movies and all of the different things. So the pop culture element here, are they desensitizing? Is that what that is? Or are they foreshadowing? I mean, what exactly is behind all of that?
You have to go back to what we talked about with mind renewal and understand the enemy knows how to bring something to pass in humanity. Like I told you last night, we did not create civilization. We inherited it. So we mirror a greater reality in the unseen realm.
Right.
So they understand and know how to manipulate us.
Sure.
So they'll use various techniques, movies, media, things of that nature, to kind of build something within us that they can one day inhabit and make real. So it's kind of like, we see in Genesis 2, we see Yahweh, which is Jesus. He is forming Adam out of the dust of the ground. But Adam didn't become Adam until he was breathed in the breath of life, as the Hebrew says. So what the enemy seeks to do is he takes these ideas of aliens, takes these ideas of hybrid beings, all the various things, transgenderism, whatever it is, and he forms those things slowly but surely. He uses sitcoms to do it.
Sure.
If it can get it in 28 minutes, you get a quick little lesson on why we should be tolerant, or why we should be more loving, or why we should be accepting, and they make you sympathetic towards a certain characteristic that the Bible calls abominable. And so it's kind of like social engineering. They kind of get in there and they begin to say, oh, well, so and so is this, so they're okay, so it must be okay, or they're successful, so it must be all right. And so our kids see this stuff, and basically it's being formed, but eventually there'll be breath to it. The enemy, but instead of God breathing in it, an unclean spirit will inhabit it and create, you see, the desire, the mindset, and actually skew the individual into believing that that is a normal reality.
Wow. So that's a very effective tool in our culture, and the culture, not just in our culture, but the culture of the world, entertainment. And we see it in music.
That is exactly what he's called. When we go to Genesis 3, and it says the serpent, the word serpent is nakash. Nakash in the Greek, or in the Hebrew, I'm sorry. And it has a very different definition. In fact, you could break down the etymology of the word, and it means enchanter.
Wow.
And, it also can mean Casanova. So it shows, it shows that we're not dealing with a pitchforked, red, ugly, or serpentine, ugly individual. We're dealing with, in fact, the actual word calls him a shining one. Okay? So there's a brilliance to him, and there's an attraction to him. Paul talks about it in the 11th chapter of 2 Corinthians. He says, don't you know that Satan can transform into an angel of light?
Right.
Well, he was an angel of light. And so he appears not the way that we would think he would. He doesn't come on the scene and growl at you.
Very seductive.
He's seductive.
Subtle.
He's an enchanter. And I shared with you that scripture out of 2 Timothy where it says, evil seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. The word seducer there is goes in the Greek, and it means actor.
Wow.
It means magician.
So it's almost like these actors that lecture us about, let's just say climate change, and then they get on their private jet and buzz off across the world to a climate conference while using, infinite amounts more carbon than the average person. They are not only deceiving, but being deceived, and probably think they're doing the right thing in much of that.